The ornate coffin looked like the most comfortable bed Clara Kane had ever seen. She stumbled through the darkness of what she thought was an unused storage room in the museum's basement, her vision swimming with exhaustion after 3 consecutive double shifts. The security guard job was supposed to be temporary, just until she finished her art history degree, but rent in the city was brutal, and sleep had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Her supervisor had told her to check the lower levels before clocking out, something about recent break-ins in the historical district, and Clara had nodded numbly, even though her body felt like it was moving through molasses. The room was cold, beautifully so, and the velvet-lined interior of the elaborate coffin gleamed in the dim emergency lighting. Her exhausted mind registered it as some kind of antique display piece, probably part of the Gothic revival exhibition that was supposed to open next month. The crimson silk looked impossibly soft, and before rational thought could intervene, Clara climbed inside, curling up on her side with a sigh of pure relief. Just 5 minutes, she told herself. Just 5 minutes to rest her burning eyes. She was asleep before she could reconsider. Somewhere in the depths of true darkness, something ancient stirred. Caelan Drăculești, king of the Eastern Territories and lord of the Night Court, had not been disturbed during his daylight rest in 3 centuries. The carefully maintained underground chamber beneath the museum was one of several safe houses he kept throughout the city, hidden in plain sight among the human world's relics and curiosities. His kind had learned long ago that the best place to hide was often directly under mortal noses, disguised as history or legend. But this was no legend climbing into his resting place. Consciousness returned to him slowly, as it always did with sunset still hours away. First came awareness of his body, then his surroundings, then the utterly foreign sensation of warmth pressed against his chest. His eyes opened to complete darkness, adjusted instantly, and found her. A young woman, deeply asleep, curled against him in his coffin like she belonged there. For a long moment, Caelan simply stared, his ancient mind processing this impossibility. His white hair fell across his pale face as he propped himself slightly up on one elbow, studying the intruder with fascination rather than anger. She was beautiful in an utterly human way, dark hair spilling across the crimson silk, her face peaceful in sleep despite the purple shadows beneath her eyes. Her uniform marked her as museum security, though what kind of guard fell asleep in a coffin was beyond even his considerable experience. Her heartbeat was slow and steady, her breathing deep. She smelled of coffee, old books, and exhaustion so profound it was almost a physical thing. Something in his chest tightened unexpectedly at the sight of those dark circles, at the way her fingers clutched the fabric of her jacket even in sleep, as though afraid to let go of anything in case it was taken from her. This girl was running on empty in every possible way. Caelan reached out carefully, his pale fingers hovering near her face but not quite touching. He could wake her, certainly. Could command her to leave, erase her memory of this place, ensure she never returned. It would be simple, effortless even. But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the novelty of the situation, or perhaps it was the way she'd curled into his side as though seeking comfort, unconsciously drawn to the unnatural cold of his body like a balm against whatever burned her out so completely. Or perhaps it was simply that in 400 years of existence, no one had ever looked so peaceful in his presence. The decision surprised him even as he made it. Caelan settled back down, adjusting his position to give her more room, and watched her sleep as the minutes ticked by. Dawn was still hours away. He had time. And this exhausted girl who'd mistaken his coffin for a bed had, without knowing it, posed a question he suddenly wanted answered. What kind of human could sleep so trustingly beside a monster? Clara woke to the feeling of being watched. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion flooding her senses before panic could fully take hold. She wasn't in her apartment. She wasn't at the museum security desk. She was in something small and dark and confined, lying on something soft, and there was someone else there with her. She jerked upright with a gasp, her head nearly hitting the coffin lid, and found herself staring directly into the most extraordinary eyes she'd ever seen. They were silver, true silver, gleaming in the darkness with their own light, set in a face so pale and perfect it looked carved from marble. White hair fell around aristocratic features, and the man watching her had the kind of beauty that belonged in paintings, not real life, the kind of beauty that made her very certain she was no longer dealing with anything human. "Please don't scream," he said, his voice a low, accented purr that seemed to resonate in her bones. "I would prefer not to have to influence you, but I will if necessary." Clara's breath came fast and shallow, her mind racing. The coffin, his appearance, the way his eyes reflected light that wasn't there. Every childhood story, every legend, every late-night horror movie suddenly crashed into her conscious mind with the weight of truth. "You're a vampire," she whispered. "I am." He tilted his head, studying her with open curiosity. "And you are trespassing in my resting place, though I confess I've never had anyone simply climb in and go to sleep before. It was remarkably bold of you." "I didn't know." The words tumbled out. "I thought it was a display piece. I was just so tired and it looked comfortable, and I only meant to rest for a minute. I'm so sorry. Please don't kill me." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of what might have been amusement or surprise. "Kill you? No, I don't think so. You haven't actually harmed anything, merely borrowed my bed without permission. Rude, certainly, but hardly a capital offense." He moved then, sitting up fully, and Clara scrambled backward until her back hit the coffin's far end. There was nowhere to go. "Though I am curious what would drive a young woman to such exhaustion that she'd sleep anywhere, even in a coffin. Tell me, little trespasser, when did you last have a proper rest?" The question was so unexpected that Clara answered honestly. "I don't know. 3 days? 4? I've been working double shifts and I have classes during the day and my roommate plays music until 3 in the morning. I just needed to close my eyes for a minute." "You work here?" He glanced at her uniform, then back to her face. "As security?" "Yes. It's temporary." She wasn't sure why she was explaining this to a vampire, but something about his tone wasn't threatening, despite the situation's absolute insanity. "I'm an art history student. This was supposed to be part-time, but then they cut staff and needed coverage, and I need the money, so..." "So you run yourself into the ground and pass out in coffins." He said it flatly, and Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks despite her fear. "Foolish, dangerous. You're fortunate it was my coffin you chose. Another of my kind might not have been so accommodating to find a human in their sanctuary." "I really am sorry." Clara's voice shook slightly. "If you let me go, I won't tell anyone. I'll forget this ever happened. I'll request a different floor to patrol, I swear." "Will you?" He leaned forward slightly, and Clara caught her breath at how inhumanly graceful the movement was. "Can you truly forget this easily? Can you go back to your exhausting half-life, pretending you didn't sleep beside a monster and wake to find him more curious than angry?" His eyes narrowed. "I don't think you can, Clara Kane." Her heart stopped. "How do you know my name?" "Your badge." He gestured to her chest. "Also, I can hear your heartbeat, smell your fear, and sense the blood moving through your veins. Learning your name is comparatively mundane." He extended one elegant hand. "I am Caelan Drăculești, and you have accidentally stumbled into something far more complicated than you can possibly imagine." Clara stared at the offered hand, then at his face. The surname registered with a bolt of recognition from her studies. Drăculești, as in House of the Dragon, the historical Wallachian dynasty. His expression shifted into something that might have been approval. "You know your history." "Yes, my family has held power for a very long time, though the world has largely forgotten us. We prefer it that way." He kept his hand extended, patient. "Take my hand, Clara. I give you my word I mean you no harm. That's worth something, even if you don't yet understand how much." Against every survival instinct, Clara reached out and placed her hand in his. His skin was cold as marble and just as smooth, his grip firm but careful, as though he was acutely aware of how easily he could break her. He helped her out of the coffin with effortless strength, and Clara found herself standing in what was clearly not a museum storage room at all. The space was large, decorated in dark woods and rich fabrics, with actual torches burning in iron sconces along stone walls, a legitimate underground chamber hidden beneath modern foundations. "This is your home?" she asked, looking around in wonder despite her lingering fear. "One of several." Caelan released her hand and moved to light more candles, illuminating the space further. He was tall, Clara realized, and dressed in clothing that somehow balanced historical and modern black fabric that looked expensive and moved like silk. I maintain residences throughout the city and beyond. This one serves as a convenient resting place when court business keeps me in the historical district after dawn. Court business? Clara tried to process that. There's a vampire court? Like, with politics and everything? Of course. Did you think we simply lurked in shadows and attacked random humans? He turned to face her, and the look he gave her was almost exasperated. We are immortal, not animals. We have laws, hierarchies, territories, and yes, politics that would make your human governments look simple by comparison. He moved to a cabinet and retrieved a crystal glass, filling it with water from a carafe. Here, drink. You're dehydrated and you look half dead yourself. Clara accepted the glass automatically, then hesitated. Is it safe? If I wanted to drug you, and I would hardly need to tamper with water. I could simply command your mind and be done with it. He said it matter-of-factly, without threat. But I told you, I mean no harm. Drink. She did, and the cool water felt like salvation on her parched throat. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was until that moment. Caelan watched her drain the entire glass, then refilled it without being asked. Thank you, Clara said quietly. You're welcome. He leaned against the cabinet, arms crossed, studying her. Now, we must discuss what happens next. You've discovered not only that vampires exist, but the location of one of my private sanctuaries. This presents something of a problem. Fear spiked through her again. I told you, I won't tell anyone. And I believe you mean that. But humans are complicated creatures. Exhaustion makes you vulnerable to mistakes, to talking in your sleep, to forgetting to guard your thoughts and expressions. You would try to keep the secret, but eventually it would slip out. His silver eyes held hers. And I cannot allow that to happen. So what are you going to do? Clara's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Erase my memory? I could. It would be simple. He tilted his head. But I find myself reluctant to do so. You interest me. Clara Kane. Anyone who could sleep so peacefully beside a vampire king is either remarkably stupid or remarkably unafraid. And you don't strike me as stupid. I didn't know you were there, she pointed out. I probably wouldn't have been so peaceful if I'd known I was using a vampire as a pillow. The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? Probably not. Yet when you woke, you didn't scream. You were afraid, yes, but you listened. You answered my questions. You're standing here now, having a conversation with me rather than attempting to flee or having collapsed in hysterics. That speaks to a strength of character that's rare among humans. Clara wasn't sure whether to be flattered or insulted. What's your point? My point is that I'm going to offer you a choice, which is more than most of my kind would grant a human in this situation. Caelan straightened, his full attention focused on her with an intensity that made her want to step back. Option 1. I erase your memory of this encounter, influence you to request a different patrol route as you suggested, and you go back to your exhausting existence none the wiser. Safe, simple, and ultimately pointless. And Option 2? Option 2. You enter into my service. He raised a hand as she opened her mouth to protest. Not as food, before your imagination runs wild. I have sources for that which don't involve terrifying art students. No, I mean as a human liaison. Someone who can move in daylight, interact with human institutions on my behalf, and provide perspective on the mortal world that I, despite my long existence, sometimes lack. Clara blinked. You want to hire me? In essence, yes, the position would be compensated, of course, generously. Enough that you could quit your security job, focus on your studies, and sleep in an actual bed rather than coffins. That almost smile again. It would also ensure your silence through mutual benefit rather than coercion. You would have reason to keep my secrets, because doing so would serve your own interests. And if I say no, Clara asked carefully, then I erase your memory and we part ways, as I said. No harm will come to you either way. You have my word on that, and a vampire king's word is binding in ways you cannot break even if you wish to. He moved closer, and Clara fought the urge to retreat. "But I hope you'll say yes. I think you would be well suited to this role, and I think you could use someone to ensure you don't work yourself to death before you've finished your degree." It was insane. All of it. Yesterday, Clara's biggest problem had been whether she could afford both rent and textbooks this month. Now she was standing in a secret vampire lair being offered a job by an immortal king who looked like a fallen angel and spoke with an accent that belonged to another century. And yet, "Would I be safe?" she asked, "from you and from other vampires?" "Under my protection, you would be as safe as it's possible to be in this world." Caelan's voice took on a harder edge. "I'm not a minor noble, Clara. I'm a king. My name carries weight. Any who touched you without permission would answer to me, and I assure you, that is not a fate anyone would court willingly." There was something dark in the way he said it, a promise of violence that sent a shiver down her spine. But strangely, it didn't feel threatening. It felt protective, the way a guard dog might be dangerous to intruders but loyal to its family. Clara thought about her tiny apartment, her exhaustion, the crushing weight of trying to survive in a city that seemed designed to grind people down. She thought about falling asleep in a coffin because she was so tired she couldn't distinguish furniture from funerary equipment. She thought about the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hands shook from too much caffeine and not enough food. Then she thought about the water he'd given her, the careful way he'd helped her from the coffin, the fact that he was offering her a choice at all when he clearly didn't have to. "What would you need me to do?" she asked. His expression shifted into something satisfied. "Practical questions. Good. The role would vary depending on necessity, but primarily I need someone who can conduct daylight business, signing documents, meeting with human contacts, verifying information in public records. I also have extensive art collections that require proper cataloging, which I understand is your area of study. You would essentially be a personal assistant, but one who understands the unique complications of working for someone who cannot venture into sunlight. And you'd pay me enough to quit the museum?" "I'd pay you enough to quit the museum, cover your tuition, and ensure you have proper housing and food. I have significant resources, Clara. Money is not a concern." He moved to a desk in the corner and retrieved a card, offering it to her. "This is my contact information. Think about it if you need time. Call that number before midnight tomorrow with your decision." Clara took the card, staring at the elegant script. Just a name and a phone number, nothing else. "And if I decide yes, what happens?" "Then you'll come to work for me, and your life will become considerably more complicated, but infinitely more interesting." Caelan walked toward a heavy door at the far end of the chamber. "For now, it's nearly midnight. You should return home and rest properly. The exit passage leads to an alley 3 blocks from here. No one will see you leave." "Wait." Clara followed him. "That's it? You're just letting me go?" "I told you I would. Did you think I was lying?" He opened the door, revealing a stone staircase leading upward. "I keep my promises, Clara Kane. Always. It's one of the few absolutes in my existence." He gestured to the stairs. "Go. Sleep. Consider my offer. And whatever you decide, do try to be more careful where you rest in the future. The next vampire might not be so understanding." Clara hesitated at the threshold, looking back at him. In the candlelight, he looked like something out of a Gothic painting, beautiful and dangerous and utterly impossible. "Thank you," she said finally, "for not killing me." "You're welcome. For what it's worth, I'm glad you chose my coffin. It's been a very long time since anything surprised me." He inclined his head in what might have been a slight bow. "Good night, Clara." She climbed the stairs in a daze, emerging into a cold alley exactly as he'd promised. The city sprawled around her, full of light and noise and normal human activity, and for a moment, Clara wondered if she'd dreamed the entire encounter. But the card was still in her hand, solid and real, and her body remembered the cold of Caelan's skin, the silver of his eyes. Vampires were real, and one of them had just offered her a job. Clara didn't sleep that night despite her exhaustion. She lay in her cramped apartment, listening to her roommate's music thumping through the thin walls, turning the card over and over in her hands. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she should forget the whole thing and request a transfer to the museum's upper floors like a sensible person. but rationality had never gotten her anywhere except exhausted and broke. By morning, she'd made her decision. The phone rang only once before Caelan answered. "Good evening, Clara." "It's 10 in the morning," she said. "For you, perhaps. For me, it's evening. I'm nocturnal, remember?" She could hear amusement in his voice. "Have you reached a decision?" "Yes." Clara took a deep breath. "I accept your offer. I'll work for you." "Excellent. I'm pleased." There was satisfaction in his tone. "Can you come to the address I'm about to send you at sunset? We'll discuss terms properly and begin your orientation. Wear something comfortable. The night court can be overwhelming for first-time visitors." "Wait, what? Night court? I thought I'd just be doing paperwork and cataloging." "You will be. But first you need to be officially registered as under my protection. That requires appearing before the court and accepting my patronage formally. It's tradition, and tradition matters greatly among my kind." He paused. "Don't worry. I'll be there, and no one will touch you. You have my word." Clara's grip tightened on the phone. "Should I be scared?" "Probably a little, yes, it would be wise, but not of me." "Clara, never of me. I chose you, which means I'm responsible for you, and I take my responsibilities very seriously." His voice softened slightly. "You'll be safe. I promise." "Okay." She wasn't sure she believed him, but she'd already committed. "Sunset. I'll be there." "I look forward to it." He ended the call, and a moment later, her phone buzzed with an address in the city's oldest district, the part that predated modern construction and still held buildings from the original colonial settlement. Of course, that's where the vampire court would be. Clara spent the day in a state of nervous anticipation, mechanically attending her classes without absorbing anything, then returning home to stare at her closet in confusion. What did one wear to a vampire court? Every formal outfit she owned was either too cheap, too casual, or designed for human job interviews, not immortal politics. In the end, she settled on simple black pants and a dark blue blouse, the nicest thing she owned, and hoped it would be sufficient. She left her apartment 2 hours before sunset, taking 3 different buses to reach the historical district, and found herself standing before a building that looked like it had been transported directly from medieval Europe. It was a mansion, really, built of dark stone and rising 4 stories with narrow windows and Gothic architectural details. The kind of place that should have been a museum itself, except it was clearly private property, marked by an iron gate and manicured grounds that suggested active habitation. Clara checked the address 3 times to be sure. As the sun touched the horizon, the front door opened and Caelan stepped out. He looked different in the fading daylight, more real somehow, though no less otherworldly. He wore modern clothing now, expensive and tailored, all in shades of black and deep gray that made his white hair seem to glow. His silver eyes found her immediately, and he smiled, a real smile this time, showing just a hint of fang. "Punctual. I appreciate that." He beckoned her forward. "Come. The sun is almost down, and the court will be gathering." Clara walked through the gate on shaking legs. Up close, Caelan radiated a kind of power that made the air feel heavy, like standing near a thunderstorm. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "That's wise. Many of those you're about to meet are older and far less patient than I am." He offered his arm in an old-fashioned gesture. "Stay close to me. Don't speak unless directly addressed. Don't make eye contact with anyone unless I introduce them specifically. And whatever you see or hear, don't show fear. They can smell it, and some will take it as invitation." "You're really selling this," Clara muttered, but she took his arm anyway. His cold skin was oddly steadying through the fabric of his sleeve. He led her inside, through a foyer that belonged in a palace, all marble and dark wood and artwork that Clara's trained eye recognized as authentic pieces worth millions. Portraits lined the walls showing pale figures in historical dress, and she realized she was looking at generations of vampires frozen in time. "My family," Caelan said, following her gaze, "and other members of the Eastern Court. Some are still with us, others fell to time, politics, or stupidity. We are immortal, not invincible." They descended a staircase that spiraled down into the earth, deep below the mansion's foundation, and Clara's ears popped with the pressure change. The temperature dropped with each step until her breath misted in the air. Finally, they reached a massive door carved with symbols Clara didn't recognize, and Caelan pushed it open with one hand. The chamber beyond stole Clara's breath. It was enormous, a cathedral carved from living rock with vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow above. Pillars of dark stone supported the space, each one carved with intricate designs that seemed to move in the flickering torchlight. And everywhere, vampires, dozens of them, maybe more, all pale and beautiful and terrifying. They turned as one when Caelan entered, their eyes reflecting light like cats, a sea of silver and gold and deep crimson stares. The attention was suffocating, predatory, and Clara fought the urge to run. Caelan's hand covered hers on his arm, steadying. "Breathe," he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "You're with me. You're safe." He led her forward, and the crowd parted like water, vampires stepping aside to create a path. Clara kept her eyes forward, following Caelan's earlier instruction, but she could feel their gazes on her skin, assessing, curious, hungry. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. At the far end of the chamber sat an elaborate throne carved from black stone, and toward this Caelan walked with absolute confidence. When they reached the base of the throne's dais, he stopped and turned to address the gathered court. "I invoke the right of patronage," he announced, his voice carrying through the chamber with undeniable authority. "I claim this human, Clara Kane, as under my protection and in my service. Let it be witnessed and recorded. Any who touch her without my permission will answer to me personally." Silence fell, heavy and complete. Then a figure emerged from the shadows beside the throne, another vampire, this one female with silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes like frozen amber. She wore a gown that looked medieval, all velvet and intricate embroidery, and moved with the same predatory grace as Caelan. "The right of patronage is acknowledged, King Caelan," she said, her voice formal. "But this is unusual. You have not claimed a human in over a century. Why this girl? What makes her worthy of your protection?" Caelan's expression didn't change. "That is my concern, Lady Ravenna, not the court's. I have invoked the right, which is mine to claim as king. The reasons need not be explained. Nevertheless, we are curious." Ravenna descended the steps, circling Clara like a shark. Clara forced herself to remain still, to breathe evenly, even as every instinct screamed danger. "She's pretty enough, I suppose, in that fragile human way. Is that it? Have you taken a pet?" "What I have taken is a liaison who will serve the court's interests as well as my own," Caelan said coolly. "She has knowledge and skills that will prove useful. That should be sufficient explanation." "Should it?" Ravenna stopped directly in front of Clara, leaning close enough that Clara could see the unnaturally sharp fangs behind her red lips. "Tell me, little human, do you understand what you've agreed to? Do you know what it means to belong to a vampire king?" Clara's throat was dry, but she remembered Caelan's instruction not to show fear. "I understand that I'm under his protection and in his service. I understand that I'm safe as long as I honor that arrangement. And I understand that this court has rules, and I'm expected to follow them." Ravenna's eyes widened slightly, surprised. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, she has spine. How delightful. Very well, Caelan, keep your little human. But if she causes problems, they're yours to handle." "She won't." Caelan's certainty was absolute. "And if anyone takes issue with her presence, they can bring their concerns to me directly. Are there any challenges to my claim?" More silence. Clara realized she was witnessing a test of power, and Caelan had just reminded everyone in the room exactly who he was. No one spoke. No one moved to challenge him. "Then it's settled." Caelan turned, guiding Clara back toward the exit. "Clara Kane is recognized as under the protection of House Drăculești, with all rights and privileges that entails. The court is dismissed." He walked her out, the crowd parting again, and Clara didn't dare breathe properly until they were back in the upper mansion, the heavy door closed between them and the gathered vampires. "I think I'm going to pass out," she said weakly. "No, you're not. You're too strong for that." But Caelan led her to a sitting room and pressed her into a chair anyway, then poured her a glass of something amber from a crystal decanter. "Drink. It's brandy. It will help." Clara drank, and the burn of alcohol grounded her. That was terrifying. Yes, But you handled it perfectly. He sat across from her, looking pleased. You didn't show fear. You answered Ravenna's challenge directly, and you didn't flinch when she tested you. Many humans would have fainted or run screaming. You stood your ground. I was too scared to move, Clara admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. Caelan leaned back, studying her. You impressed them, whether you realize it or not, and you impressed me. I chose well. Clara took another sip of brandy, feeling warmth spread through her chest. So what happens now? Am I officially your employee? You are officially under my patronage, which is more significant. You're not merely an employee, Clara. You're someone I've claimed responsibility for. That carries weight in vampire society. It means you have my protection, my resources, and my attention. It also means, he added more seriously, that your actions reflect on me. If you betray my trust or reveal our secrets, the consequences wouldn't just affect you, they'd affect my standing in the court. No pressure then, Clara muttered. I wouldn't have chosen you if I didn't believe you capable of handling the responsibility. He rose, moving to a desk and retrieving a folder. Now, for the practical matters, this contains your employment contract, details of your compensation, and information about the residence I'm providing. Residence? Clara nearly dropped her glass. You can't live in that cramped apartment with the loud roommate anymore. You need proper rest, and you need to be accessible when I require your services. I've arranged a furnished apartment in a building I own, 3 blocks from here. It's yours for as long as you're in my employ, rent-free. The address is in the folder. Clara opened the folder with shaking hands and nearly choked at the salary figure listed. It was more than she'd make in 3 years at the museum. This can't be right. It's quite right. I told you, money isn't a concern, and that's merely your base salary. There will be bonuses for particularly valuable work. He returned to his chair. You'll also have a monthly allowance for necessities, and your tuition will be paid directly to the university. I expect you to continue your studies. Your knowledge of art history is part of why I chose you. I don't know what to say. Clara stared at the papers, her mind reeling. This is too much. It's exactly what you're worth. Caelan's voice was firm. Don't undervalue yourself, Clara. You're providing a service that has genuine worth to me. The compensation reflects that. Now, sign the contract if you agree to the terms. We can begin your actual work tomorrow evening. Clara read through the contract carefully, her academic training making her cautious even in her shock. But the terms were clear and surprisingly fair. She was to work primarily evening and night hours, flexible around her class schedule. She was to maintain absolute secrecy about vampire society. She was to follow Caelan's instructions and represent him professionally in all dealings. In return, she received the listed compensation, his protection, and surprisingly extensive benefits including health care, which she found both thoughtful and ironic. She signed. Excellent, Caelan countersigned with a flourish, then handed her a set of keys. Your apartment. I've had it prepared for your arrival. You should move your belongings tomorrow. Take whatever time you need to settle in, then report here tomorrow at sunset. I'll begin teaching you what you need to know about navigating both worlds. Clara took the keys, their weight solid and real in her palm. Thank you for all of this. I know I already said it, but truly, thank you. You're welcome. He walked her to the door. And Clara, welcome to the night world. Your life will never be the same. He wasn't wrong. The apartment Caelan provided was more beautiful than anywhere Clara had ever lived. It occupied the top floor of a renovated historical building, all exposed brick and tall windows, furnished with careful taste and more space than she knew what to do with. There was a real bedroom with an actual bed that didn't squeak, a kitchen with appliances that worked, and a bathroom with water pressure that felt like luxury. She moved her meager possessions in a single trip, and they looked lost in the spacious rooms. That night, she slept 12 hours straight and woke feeling human for the first time in months. Her education in the vampire world began the following evening. Caelan proved to be a patient but exacting teacher. He showed her the systems he'd built to navigate human bureaucracy without being present, the network of contacts he maintained, the careful records of his extensive holdings. He explained vampire law, the hierarchy of courts, the ancient codes that governed their society. He taught her how to recognize different vampire lineages by subtle signs, how to address nobles properly, and most importantly, how to protect herself. Always carry iron, he instructed, pressing a small knife into her hand during their third session. We can't be killed by it, but we intensely dislike its touch. It burns us. If any vampire threatens you, this will make them back off long enough for you to escape or call for me. Would they really threaten me? I'm under your protection. Most won't dare, but there are always those who push boundaries, who test limits. Better you're prepared. His eyes held hers seriously. I meant what I said, Clara. You're under my protection, but I can't be with you every moment. You need to be able to defend yourself. She learned quickly, absorbing information with the same intensity she brought to her university studies. Caelan seemed pleased with her progress, and their working relationship developed into something almost comfortable. He was formal but not unkind, demanding but fair. And despite his inhuman nature, Clara found herself relaxing around him, maybe too much, too. It happened during her second week, while she was cataloging artwork in one of his storage rooms. Caelan had joined her, pointing out details about various pieces' histories, and Clara had become so engrossed in a Renaissance painting that she forgot who she was talking to. She argued a point about the artist's technique, gesturing enthusiastically, and accidentally swatted his arm. She froze, horrified. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. But Caelan was laughing, actually laughing, a sound of genuine delight. Don't apologize. It's refreshing to be treated like a person rather than a monster. Argue with me all you like, Clara. I enjoy the debate. From that moment, something shifted between them. Their sessions became conversations rather than lectures. Caelan asked about her life, her studies, her dreams beyond survival. Clara found herself asking about his past, his long existence, and surprisingly, he answered. He told her about the world before electricity, about watching empires rise and fall, about the loneliness of immortality. Don't you have friends? She asked one night, sorting through documents. Other vampires you're close to? Allies, yes, associates, but friends. He considered. Friendship requires trust, and trust is dangerous when you're immortal. People scheme, Clara. They plot and plan across decades, even centuries. The friend who laughs with you tonight might be positioning to betray you 20 years from now. It becomes easier to maintain distance. That sounds lonely. It is. He said it simply, without self-pity. But it's the nature of what I am. We're solitary creatures at heart, for all our courts and politics. We don't form attachments easily. Clara looked at him, really looked, and saw past the otherworldly beauty to something almost human underneath. I think that's sad, she said quietly. He met her eyes, something flickering in his silver gaze. Perhaps, but it's kept me alive for 4 centuries. Attachment is vulnerability, and vulnerability is death in my world. Yet despite his words, Caelan seemed to seek her company more and more. He'd appear in her apartment unannounced, ostensibly to discuss work, but then stay to debate art or politics or philosophy until nearly dawn. He'd bring her gifts, small things, claiming they were merely practical, but choosing them with obvious care. A leather journal for her notes, a rare book on Renaissance art from his personal library, a painting he thought she'd appreciate, casually worth more than her previous year's salary. And Clara, despite knowing better, found herself looking forward to seeing him, found herself dressing more carefully before their meetings, found herself thinking about his rare smiles and the way his eyes softened when she challenged him on something. She was in trouble, and she knew it. The moment she admitted it to herself, she was alone in her apartment, staring at a text message from Caelan asking her to join him for a gallery opening. A human event, but one he'd been invited to attend by a mortal art collector who knew him under one of his many aliases. He wanted her perspective on the pieces being shown. It wasn't a date. It was work. But Clara's heart still raced as she typed her acceptance. The gallery opening was in one of the city's most exclusive spaces, the kind of place Clara had only read about in art magazines. She wore the one formal dress she owned, a simple black sheath that was probably hopelessly inadequate, and felt completely out of place among the elegantly dressed crowd. Until Caelan appeared beside her, materializing from the crowd with that unnatural grace, and his eyes swept over her in a way that made her breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said, his accent thickening slightly as it did when he was genuinely moved. "You don't have to say that. I know this dress is... I don't lie, Clara. I said you look beautiful because you do. He offered his arm, the gesture as natural as breathing for someone from his era. Shall we? They moved through the gallery together, and Clara gradually forgot her self-consciousness as she became absorbed in the art. She analyzed pieces aloud, pointing out techniques and influences, and Caelan listened with obvious interest, occasionally offering his own observations, informed by having lived through the period some paintings depicted. This artist, he was from Venice, Caelan said, studying a dramatic oil painting. I knew him, actually. Brilliant but temperamental. He once threw a palette knife at a patron who criticized his use of shadow. Clara blinked. You knew him? When? 1823, 1824, somewhere in there. I was visiting Italy on business. He painted me once, though I bought the portrait and destroyed it. Too dangerous to leave evidence of my appearance unchanging. He tilted his head. He captured something in it that disturbed me, I remember. A loneliness in the eyes. I didn't appreciate being seen so clearly. You let him see you, Clara said softly. Actually see you. I was younger then, more careless, but his eyes found hers. Though I find I'm making that mistake again, aren't I? The moment stretched between them, heavy with meaning, and Clara's heart hammered in her chest. She should look away, should make a joke, break the tension. Instead, she held his gaze. Is it a mistake, she asked. Before he could answer, someone bumped into Clara from behind, jolting her forward. Caelan's hands came up instantly, catching her, steadying her with supernatural speed. But the drunk art patron who'd stumbled kept going, his elbow knocking into Clara's shoulder hard enough to send pain shooting down her arm. Caelan's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His eyes went silver bright, his pupils narrowing to slits, and he moved between Clara and the drunk man with a speed that blurred. The temperature around them dropped precipitously, frost forming on nearby champagne glasses. Every vampire instinct Clara had learned to recognize screamed danger, and she realized the entire gallery had gone silent, sensing a predator in their midst even if they didn't understand what. Caelan, she said quickly, touching his arm. His muscles were rigid as stone beneath her fingers. I'm fine. He didn't mean it. He's just drunk. The man, finally realizing something was very wrong, stumbled backward, his face going pale. I'm sorry, I didn't see her. You will be more careful, Caelan said, each word precisely articulated and laced with compulsion. Clara saw the man's eyes glaze slightly as vampire influence took hold. You will watch where you're going. You will leave now and remember nothing of this encounter. Go. The man turned and walked out like a puppet on strings. Caelan took a careful breath, and the air gradually warmed. The crowd, confused but no longer sensing danger, resumed their conversations with the relieved chatter of people who'd just avoided something they didn't understand. We should leave, Clara said quietly. Yes. Caelan's voice was strained. He guided her out of the gallery with a hand on her lower back, proprietary and protective, and didn't speak again until they were in his car, a sleek black vehicle that probably cost more than her previous life's entire net worth. I'm sorry, he said finally, staring straight ahead through the windshield. I overreacted. You were protecting me. I was about to rip that man's throat out for accidentally bumping you. That's not protection, Clara. That's possession. He turned to face her, and his expression was tormented. This is becoming a problem. What is? You, this, whatever this is becoming. He gestured between them. I chose you as an employee, a liaison, someone useful. But you're becoming something else, and I don't know how to handle it. Clara's heart lodged in her throat. What am I becoming? Important. The word came out ragged. Too important. I care what happens to you beyond your utility to me. I seek your company for its own sake. I give you gifts not because they're practical, but because I want to see your face when you receive them. And tonight, when that fool hurt you, even accidentally, I wanted to kill him for it. Do you understand how dangerous that is? How completely it violates everything I've learned about survival? Caelan. You're human, Clara. Fragile, mortal, temporary. In what will feel like a blink to me, you'll grow old and die, and I'll still be here, unchanged. Getting attached to you is the height of foolishness. I've watched civilizations crumble. I've outlived empires. I've learned not to care about ephemeral things. And yet here you are, making me forget every lesson I've learned. Clara reached out, covering his cold hand with her warm one. I'm scared too, she admitted. I know what you are. I know the danger. I know how impossible this is, but I can't stop thinking about you either. You're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen something worth protecting, who's cared whether I eat or sleep or survive. And yes, you're a vampire, and technically my employer, and this whole thing is probably the worst idea ever, but I don't care. You should care. But his hand turned beneath hers, gripping her fingers. I could hurt you so easily. I could kill you by accident. I could lose control for a single moment and you'd be gone. But you won't. You haven't. You're the most controlled person I've ever met, Caelan. You scare everyone around you because they know how much power you're constantly restraining. She squeezed his hand. I trust you. Then you're either very brave or very foolish. But his eyes had softened, the inhuman silver warming to something almost human. Clara, if we continue down this path, there's no going back. Once a vampire claims someone is theirs, truly theirs, it becomes absolute, obsessive. You think I was possessive tonight? That was nothing compared to what I'd become if I let myself fully care for you. And if I want that, Clara asked, if I'm willing to accept the risk, then you'd be mine, he said quietly. Completely, utterly mine. I would protect you with everything I am. I would tear apart anyone who threatened you. I would lavish you with every comfort I could provide, but I would also be jealous, demanding, and entirely uncompromising about your safety. You would belong to me in a way that human relationships don't really encompass. Could you accept that? Clara thought about her life before Caelan. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible in a world that didn't care if she survived. Then she thought about how she felt now, seen, protected, valued, the way her heart raced when he entered a room, the way his rare smiles felt like gifts, the way even his possessiveness made her feel precious rather than constrained. Yes, she said. I could accept that. Caelan closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, something had changed. The careful distance he'd maintained since they met had vanished, replaced by an intensity that stole her breath. Then you're mine, he said, and leaned across to cup her face with one cold hand. From this moment, Clara Kane, you belong to me, and I will spend however many years we have ensuring you never regret that choice. When he kissed her, it was with a tenderness that belied his vampire nature. His lips were cold but gentle, asking rather than demanding, and Clara melted into the touch with a sigh of surrender. His other hand came up to cradle the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. The kiss deepened slowly, carefully, Caelan maintaining control even as Clara felt his restraint trembling at the edges. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I'll court you properly, he murmured, the way I would have centuries ago. I'll give you time to be certain. I won't rush you into anything you're not ready for. I'm already certain, Clara said. Nevertheless, you deserve romance, Clara, courtship, all the things humans expect and vampires have largely forgotten. I remember how it's done. Let me show you. He pulled back, his thumb stroking her cheek. Will you allow me that? How could she refuse when he looked at her like that? Yes. Good. He kissed her once more briefly. Then let me take you home. And tomorrow evening, we'll begin properly. He drove her back to her apartment and walked her to her door like a gentleman from another era. At the threshold, he took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth flooding through her entire body. Sleep well, Clara. Dream of me. I always do, she admitted. His smile was brilliant and just a little feral. Perfect. Until tomorrow, then. He disappeared with that supernatural speed, leaving Clara standing in her doorway with her heart racing and her lips still tingling from his kiss. She touched her mouth, almost unable to believe what had just happened. She'd fallen in love with a vampire king. And somehow, impossibly, he seemed to love her too. The courtship that followed was like something out of a storybook. Caelan courted her with all the formality and romance of his original era, combined with centuries of experience and resources. He took her to exclusive restaurants that opened only at night, private concerts in historical venues, moonlit walks through gardens that belonged to vampire nobility. He bought her dresses that made her feel like royalty, jewelry that was beautiful but never ostentatious, books he thought she'd enjoy from his extensive library. But more than the gifts, he gave her his time and attention. He listened when she talked about her studies, offered insights from having witnessed the art periods firsthand. He asked about her opinions and actually cared about her answers. He made her laugh with dry observations about modern life from an immortal perspective. He held her hand like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched, and he never pushed for more than she offered. They kissed often, increasingly passionate embraces that left Clara wanting more, but Caelan always pulled back before things went too far. He was careful with her, controlled, treating her like she might shatter in his hands. It was sweet and frustrating in equal measure. 3 weeks into their relationship, Clara finally asked about it. They were in his private study, supposedly working on cataloging a new acquisition, but mostly just talking while rain hammered against the windows. Caelan was telling her about Renaissance Venice, and Clara was curled up in a chair near the fireplace, watching the way firelight played across his pale features. "Can I ask you something personal?" she interrupted. He looked up from the painting he'd been examining. "Of course. Why haven't you tried to take things further? Physically, I mean." She felt her cheeks heat. "I know you want to, I can tell, but you always stop." Caelan set the painting aside carefully and came to kneel beside her chair, taking her hand. "Because I'm afraid," he said simply. "You're human, Clara. So delicate, so warm, so alive, and I'm a predator. Intimacy with a vampire isn't like intimacy between humans. I would have to maintain absolute control while experiencing something that pushes me toward losing it. One moment of distraction, one instant where my instincts override my consciousness, and I could kill you. I could drain you dry without meaning to, or break you with strength I don't fully restrain. The risk terrifies me. But you wouldn't hurt me. You haven't yet. Because I've been careful. Because I've maintained distance." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. "True intimacy would remove that distance entirely. I would want to bite you, Clara. The urge would be overwhelming, and while I could take blood without killing you, without turning you, managing that urge while also being intimate would require control I'm not certain I possess." "Have you ever been with a human before?" she asked softly. "Centuries ago, yes, when I was younger and more reckless. I was careful and no one died, but it was always dangerous. As I aged, as my power increased, the risk grew worse. I've avoided human lovers for 200 years because the danger became too great." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her palm. "But I want you more than I've wanted anyone in longer than I can remember. And that desperation makes me even more dangerous." Clara's heart ached at the vulnerability in his admission. This ancient, powerful creature was afraid of hurting her, and that fear overrode his own desires. What if we took it slowly? What if we figured it out together? You've spent centuries learning control. I trust you, Caelan. Your trust is both a gift and a terrible responsibility." He rested his head against her knees, a gesture of such human weariness that it made Clara's throat tight. "I don't want to lose you. Not to my own lack of control. Not before I've had whatever time we have." Clara stroked his white hair gently. "You won't lose me. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. But I don't want you to be afraid of being with me. I don't want our relationship to be defined by fear." "Then help me," he said, looking up at her with ancient eyes that held very human uncertainty. "Be patient with me. Let me learn how to touch you without breaking you. Because I do want this, Clara. I want everything with you, for however long we have. I just need to learn how to make that safe." "Okay," she said softly. "We'll learn together." That night, they took the first careful steps. Caelan brought her to his private chambers, a room she'd never entered before, decorated in dark luxury that somehow managed to feel intimate rather than cold. They kissed slowly, thoroughly, while Caelan's hands mapped her body over her clothes with reverent care. "Tell me if anything frightens you," he murmured against her lips. "Tell me immediately and I'll stop." "I'm not afraid," Clara said, and meant it. They undressed each other gradually, Caelan moving with deliberate slowness, giving her time to adjust to each new level of vulnerability. His body was pale as marble and just as perfectly formed, inhumanly beautiful in the candlelight. Scars marked his skin here and there, old wounds from before vampire healing became absolute, silver lines against white. Clara traced one across his ribs. What happened? Silver blade, 17th century, a hunter who got lucky. He caught her hand, kissing her fingertips. I survived, clearly. They lay together on his bed, skin to skin, and Caelan trembled with the effort of control. His eyes had gone silver bright, his fangs prominent, and Clara could feel the leashed violence in his frame. But his touches remained gentle, worshipful, mapping every curve and line of her body like he was memorizing something precious. When he finally made love to her, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to Clara's eyes. He moved slowly, carefully, watching her face for any sign of pain or fear. His control never wavered, even when she shattered beneath him, even when his own release drove his fangs into the pillow beside her head rather than her throat. Afterward, he held her against his chest, his cool skin a perfect contrast to her overheated body, and Clara felt completely safe, despite everything logic said she should fear. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. She felt him go still, then his arms tightened around her. Clara, you don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know. I love you. The words came out rough, like he was unused to saying them. I've loved you since you argued with me about Renaissance painting techniques and forgot to be afraid. I love your intelligence, your courage, your kindness. I love how you look at me like I'm a person rather than a monster. I love you, Clara Kane, and I will for the rest of your life. The caveat at the end stung, a reminder of their fundamental difference. Clara would age and die, and Caelan would remain. What happens when I get old? She asked quietly. Then you'll be old and I'll still love you. He kissed the top of her head. I'll care for you, protect you, treasure you until your very last breath, and then I'll mourn you for however many centuries I have left, knowing that you were the one who made me remember what it meant to feel. You could turn me, Clara said, make me like you. His entire body tensed. No. Why not? Because I won't condemn you to this existence. His voice was hard. You think immortality is a gift? It's a curse, Clara. Watching everyone you love die, watching the world change until you barely recognize it, feeling yourself become colder and more inhuman with each passing century. I won't do that to you. But then we could be together forever. You'd stop being you. The warmth, the humanity, the very things I love about you would fade. You'd become like me, beautiful, powerful, and utterly hollow inside. I've seen it happen to every vampire I've known. We lose pieces of ourselves over time until we're little more than elegant predators going through the motions of existence. I won't do that to you. Clara heard the pain in his voice, the certainty. So we just accept that this has an expiration date? We accept that what we have is precious because it's temporary. He turned her to face him, his silver eyes fierce. Every moment with you matters more because I know they're limited. I won't waste a single one, and when you're gone, I'll carry the memory of you for eternity. That's the gift you give me, Clara. You remind me what it means to be alive even though I'm not. Don't ask me to take that from you in return. She understood, even though it hurt. Caelan wasn't refusing to turn her out of selfishness, but out of love, trying to protect her from a fate he saw as worse than death. She could argue, could try to change his mind, but looking into his eyes, she knew he wouldn't budge. So instead, she kissed him. Then we make the most of the time we have. Yes. He pulled her closer, tucking her against him like she was something precious. Every single moment. They fell asleep like that, Clara warm and alive in the arms of something ancient and undead, both finding peace in an impossible love. The following months were the happiest of Clara's life. She continued her studies, working toward her degree while serving as Caelan's liaison to the human world. She met with art dealers on his behalf, authenticated purchases, managed his legal affairs in daylight. She became a familiar presence in the vampire court, no longer afraid of the pale faces and predatory stares. And every night she fell more deeply in love with Caelan. He was unfailingly attentive, romantic in ways that felt both old-fashioned and perfect. He left her notes written in careful script, brought her flowers that bloomed only at night, commissioned a portrait of her from a vampire artist who captured not just her features, but the light in her eyes. He attended her university events, standing in the back of lecture halls to watch her present papers, his presence a cool anchor in the crowd. He introduced her to his world more fully, showing her the hidden places where vampires gathered, the ancient libraries kept beneath modern cities, the courts of other vampire kingdoms. She met Lady Ravenna again, and found the terrifying vampire woman had a dry sense of humor and genuine respect for humans who proved themselves capable. She met Lucian Noctis, a vampire scholar who shared her passion for art history and could discuss Renaissance techniques from first-hand experience. She learned that vampires were people, immortal and dangerous, but still people, with personalities and quirks and relationships. They weren't monsters, just different. And they accepted her because Caelan claimed her, because she proved useful and respectful and unafraid. Clara's life became a strange balance of two worlds, daylight academia and nighttime vampire politics. And somehow it worked, until everything went wrong. It started with a challenge to Caelan's authority. A vampire named Marius Voss from one of the Western territories arrived at court claiming that Caelan had grown weak through his attachment to a human. He demanded a formal challenge for territory rights, invoking ancient laws that couldn't be refused. Clara watched from the sidelines as Marius made his case before the assembled court, his voice dripping with contempt. The great Caelan Drăculești, reduced to playing house with a mortal. Marius was tall and dark where Caelan was pale, his eyes crimson rather than silver. You've made her your weakness, King. Everyone sees it. You're distracted, softened, unfit to hold your territories. My personal life doesn't affect my ability to rule, Caelan said coldly. I've maintained order in the Eastern Territories for 200 years. My authority stands. Does it? Then prove it. Face me in formal combat. If you win, I withdraw my challenge and acknowledge your strength. If you lose, your territories become mine. Marius smiled, showing fangs. Unless you're too afraid to risk your life now that you have something to lose. It was a trap, Clara realized with cold dread. Win or lose, Marius made his point. If Caelan fought, he risked death and leaving Clara unprotected. If he refused, he looked weak and lost authority. Either way, his relationship with her became a liability. I accept your challenge, Caelan said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Tomorrow night. Witness it and be done. The court erupted in excited murmurs. Formal challenges were rare, bloody affairs that typically ended with one vampire's final death. Clara felt sick. Caelan found her after the court dispersed, his expression grim. Don't worry. I've survived 4 centuries of challenges. Marius is young and overconfident. I'll handle him. You could be killed, Clara said, her voice shaking. Because of me, because I make you weak. You don't make me weak. He cupped her face in his cold hands. You make me strong. You give me something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. Marius is wrong, and tomorrow night, I'll prove it. And if you don't? If something goes wrong? Then you'll be provided for. I've made arrangements, but it won't come to that, Clara. I promise. He kissed her deeply, desperately. Trust me. She wanted to, but fear gnawed at her as the next evening approached. The challenge took place in the deep chamber beneath Caelan's mansion, the same space where Clara had first been presented to the court. Every vampire in the region seemed to be present, packing the stone hall to witness the combat. Clara stood with Lady Ravenna and Lucian, who'd positioned themselves as her guards, their presence keeping other vampires at a careful distance. He'll win, Ravenna said quietly, sensing Clara's fear. Caelan is old and powerful. Marius is fast and strong, but he lacks experience. Then why do this? Clara asked. Why risk it? Because honor demands it, Lucian answered. Marius invoked the formal challenge. To refuse would mean losing face, losing authority. Sometimes the old laws are inconvenient, but they keep our society from complete chaos. The combat began at midnight. Caelan and Marius faced each other in the center of the chamber, both stripped to the waist, moving with inhuman grace. For a moment, they simply circled, assessing. Then Marius struck, moving with blinding speed, and the fight erupted into brutal violence. It was nothing like human combat. They moved too fast to follow properly, blurs of pale skin and dark, strikes that would have killed mortals landing with sounds like breaking stone. Marius was aggressive, all offense, trying to overwhelm with speed and ferocity, but Caelan was controlled, defensive, turning aside blows and waiting for openings. Blood spilled, dark and viscous, vampire blood that smoked slightly in the air. Both fighters took damage, wounds that would have been fatal to humans, but merely slowed vampires. The chamber echoed with the sounds of their combat, and Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't look away, terror clawing at her throat. Then Marius got through Caelan's guard, his claws raking across Caelan's chest, and Clara screamed. The sound seemed to shock everyone, cutting through the battle. Caelan's head snapped toward her, distracted for a critical instant, and Marius took advantage. He drove Caelan backward, going for his throat, and Clara watched in horror as they crashed into a stone pillar. Caelan's eyes met hers across the distance, and she saw fear there. Not for himself, but for her. Fear of what would happen to her if he lost. That fear made him desperate. He moved with sudden, terrifying speed, twisting in Marius's grip and reversing their positions. His hand shot out, fingers like blades, and pierced Marius's chest. The younger vampire's eyes went wide with shock. Caelan twisted, and Clara heard the wet sound of a heart being torn free. Marius collapsed, already beginning to decompose, vampire death taking him rapidly. Caelan stood over the body, breathing hard, his chest torn and bloody, holding his opponent's heart in one hand. "The challenge is met," he announced to the silent chamber. "Does anyone else question my authority?" No one spoke. "Good." He dropped the heart onto Marius's rapidly decaying corpse and turned toward Clara. "Take me home!" She ran to him, and he sagged against her, his weight suddenly heavy. Lady Ravenna appeared at Clara's side, helping support him, and together they got Caelan out of the chamber and back to his private rooms. "He needs blood," Ravenna said, laying him on the bed. "Fresh blood to heal properly. The wounds are too severe for time alone." "I'll send for some," Clara started. "No time. He's lost too much. It needs to be now." Ravenna's amber eyes fixed on Clara. "It needs to be you." "What? No, he said he'd never—" "He's dying, girl. Do you understand? Those wounds would have killed a younger vampire. He's old enough to survive, but only if he feeds properly. And he won't take from anyone but you. Not anymore. You're his, which means you're the only blood his body will truly accept." She grabbed Clara's wrist. "Do you love him? Yes? Then save him. Let him feed." Clara looked at Caelan, pale and bleeding on the black sheets, his silver eyes half closed with pain. "Will it turn me?" "Not if he controls himself, and he will, because he loves you too. But you have to choose this, Clara. He won't take it by force, even dying. So choose." There was no choice, really. Clara had made it months ago when she'd first kissed him. She climbed onto the bed, cradling Caelan's head in her lap. "Feed," she said softly. "Take what you need. I trust you." His eyes opened fully, focusing on her. "Clara, no." "Yes." She tilted her head, exposing her throat. "I'm yours, remember? You said so yourself. So take what's yours and heal. Please, Caelan. Let me save you the way you've saved me." He trembled, the hunger and need warring with his desperate control. Then his hand came up, cradling the back of her head gently, and he pulled her down to his mouth. The bite was sharp but brief, pain flaring and then fading into something else entirely. Warmth spread through Clara's body from the point where his fangs pierced her skin, an almost euphoric sensation that made her gasp. She felt his mouth seal over the wound, felt him drinking, felt the connection between them deepen into something profound. He took what he needed, no more, and she could feel his body healing, his strength returning. When he finally pulled back, licking the wound to close it with vampire enzymes, his eyes were bright and clear again. "You're insane," he said hoarsely. "Beautiful, brave, and completely insane. I learned from the best." Clara touched his face, relief making her dizzy. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect." He pulled her down into a kiss that tasted of copper and devotion. "Thank you for trusting me with this. I know what I asked you to risk. You're worth the risk." She curled against him, ignoring Ravenna's knowing smirk as the other vampire slipped out to give them privacy. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try not to." He wrapped his arms around her, holding tight. "Though I think you're the one who scared me tonight. When you screamed, I lost focus. I could have been killed because I was too worried about you." Then I guess we make each other vulnerable, Clara said, but also stronger. You won because you were fighting to protect me. That's not weakness, Caelan. That's purpose. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to give you something. A choice. What kind of choice? The one I refused before. He shifted so he could look into her eyes. I could turn you, Clara, make you like me. We could have forever instead of decades. I swore I wouldn't, swore I'd let you live a human life and die a human death. But tonight, watching you risk yourself for me, feeling your blood give me life, I don't want to lose you, ever. So if you want eternity, if you want to stay with me forever, I'll give you that gift, or curse, whichever it becomes. Clara's heart stopped. I thought you said immortality was hollow. It is, when you're alone. But with you, maybe it could be different. Maybe we could hold on to our humanity together, remind each other what it means to feel. Maybe you're strong enough to keep who you are, even through endless centuries. His thumb stroked her cheek. Or maybe I'm just selfish and desperate, and I can't bear the thought of watching you age and die. Maybe I'm rationalizing. But the offer stands, Clara. Choose to stay human, and I'll treasure every moment we have. Choose immortality, and I'll spend forever trying to make it worth the cost. It was the choice Clara had wanted him to offer months ago. Now, having it, she found herself uncertain. Immortality meant giving up sunlight, giving up aging, giving up the natural progression of life. It meant becoming something other than human, powerful and cold and forever changed. But it also meant staying with Caelan, learning beside him, loving him, being loved by him. It meant never having to say goodbye, never having to leave him alone again. She thought about the vampire court, about Lady Ravenna and Lucian and the others she'd met. They weren't hollow. They were different, yes, but still themselves. Still people with feelings and desires and relationships. Being vampire hadn't destroyed their humanity entirely. It had just changed it. And Clara had already changed so much since meeting Caelan. She'd stopped being a terrified, exhausted girl barely surviving and become someone confident, protected, loved. She'd found her place in two worlds, human and vampire, both. Why not embrace the second world completely? I want forever with you, she said finally. I want to stop being afraid of time running out. I want to stand beside you, not behind you. I want to be your equal, not your protected human. Turn me, Caelan. Make me yours in every way possible. You're certain? His eyes searched hers. Once it's done, there's no going back. You'll lose the sun, lose your mortality, lose the simplicity of human existence. I'm certain. I love you. I want this. Then I'll give it to you. He kissed her softly. But not tonight. You're weak from feeding me, and the transformation is brutal. You need to be strong, fully prepared. We'll do it properly when you're ready. When? Soon, after you've finished your degree, perhaps. That's only a few months away. You should complete that as a human, accomplish what you set out to do. Then we'll begin your new life. He smiled, fangs showing. Our eternal life together. Clara agreed, and the next months took on a strange quality of anticipation. She finished her classes, wrote her final papers, and graduated with honors in art history. Caelan attended the ceremony, standing in the shadows at the back of the auditorium, and Clara felt his pride as surely as if he'd shouted it. The night after graduation, Clara came to him prepared. She'd said goodbye to her human life, quit her remaining daylight obligations, and made peace with her choice. Some might call it giving up, surrendering her humanity for love, but Clara saw it as choosing, actively deciding her own fate rather than accepting what time would force on her. She found Caelan in his chambers, and he'd prepared the space like a ceremony. Candles everywhere, the bed draped in fresh linens, an almost reverent atmosphere. He took her hands when she entered. Last chance to change your mind, he said seriously. I'll love you regardless of your choice. I'm not changing my mind. Clara squeezed his fingers. I want this. I want you. I want forever. Then you'll have it. He drew her to the bed, settling her carefully. The transformation will hurt. I won't lie to you about that. My venom will feel like fire in your veins, and you'll burn from the inside out while your body dies and remakes itself. It will take 3 days, and you'll be conscious for much of it. I'll be with you the entire time, but I can't take the pain away. Can you bear that? For you? For us? Yes. Brave girl. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, memorizing the warmth of her human mouth. When you wake, you'll be like me, stronger, faster, immortal, and hungry. We'll handle that together. I'll teach you everything you need to know. I trust you. Clara tilted her head, exposing her throat one final time as a human. I'm ready. Caelan's eyes went silver bright, his fangs extending fully. He cradled her against him with infinite gentleness, and when he bit down, it was with reverence. This time, he drank deeply, taking her to the edge of death. Clara felt her heartbeat slowing, felt cold spreading through her limbs, felt her vision darkening. Just when she thought she might slip away entirely, Caelan pulled back and bit his own wrist, pressing it to her lips. Drink, he commanded. Take my blood. Let it remake you. She did, and vampire blood hit her system like lightning. It burned, exactly as he'd warned, liquid fire racing through her veins and transforming everything it touched. Clara screamed, couldn't help it, and Caelan held her through it, whispering promises and reassurances, even as her body convulsed with the change. The pain was indescribable. Every cell seemed to be dying and being reborn simultaneously, her human body fighting the transformation, even as vampire blood overrode her very DNA. Time became meaningless. She existed in a haze of agony punctuated by Caelan's voice, his cool hands, his presence the only anchor in a sea of torment. Then, eventually, it ended. Clara woke to darkness so complete it should have been absolute, but she could see perfectly, her vision adjusted to wavelengths beyond human perception. She could hear everything, Caelan's unnecessary breathing beside her, the house settling around them, the city alive beyond the walls. She could smell blood, old and new, and her body responded with immediate ravenous hunger. Easy, Caelan said, his voice sounding different to her new ears, more textured. The hunger is overwhelming at first. Breathe through it. You won't lose control. I'm here. Clara looked at him and gasped. He'd been beautiful before, but now she saw him properly for the first time, every detail impossibly clear, from the fine structure of his features to the way candlelight reflected in his eyes to the small movements that composed his preternatural grace. He was magnificent, and she loved him with an intensity that felt almost painful. How do you feel? He asked. Clara took inventory. Strong, impossibly so. Fast, she could feel the potential coiled in her new muscles. Cold, her body temperature dropped to match the death that claimed her. And hungry. So very hungry. I need to feed, she said, her voice emerging with new resonance. I know. He helped her sit up, and movement felt different now, smoother and more controlled. I have blood prepared. Later I'll teach you to hunt properly, but for now, this will sustain you. He brought her a crystal glass filled with dark liquid, and the scent alone made Clara's fangs extend with an audible snick. She drank desperately, and the blood was better than anything she'd ever tasted, rich and complex and deeply satisfying. The hunger abated to manageable levels. Good, Caelan approved. You'll need to feed every few days at first until you learn to control the hunger. I'll teach you everything. How to hunt, how to feed without killing, how to navigate vampire society as one of us rather than an outsider. You'll be my student and my partner. And your equal, Clara said, remembering his promise. And my equal. He smiled, fangs showing, and drew her into his arms. Welcome to immortality, Clara Drăculești. She blinked. Drăculești? You're mine. That makes you family. Unless you'd prefer to keep your human name. Clara tested the sound of it. Clara Drăculești. Clara of House Drăculești. Queen, if Caelan was king. The name felt right, felt like claiming her new identity completely. No, she said. I like it. I like being yours. Perfect. He kissed her, vampire to vampire now, equal and endless. Then let me show you what forever feels like. They made love as vampires, and it was entirely different from their human intimacy. Faster, stronger, without the careful restraint Caelan had needed before. They were matched now, equally powerful and equally careful, and the connection between them felt absolute. When Caelan bit her, taking blood in the midst of passion, Clara bit him back, and the exchange made everything more intense, more profound. This was what they would have now, not years or decades, but centuries, millennia perhaps. Forever to love each other, learn each other, exist together. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The following weeks were an adjustment. Clara learned to navigate her new abilities, the strength and speed and heightened senses that came with vampirism. Caelan taught her to hunt, to take blood without killing, to move through the human world without being detected. She learned that sunlight truly was lethal, her first glimpse of dawn sending her fleeing with actual burns forming on her skin, but she didn't mourn it. The night was beautiful enough. She returned to the vampire court, this time as one of them, and was formally recognized as Caelan's mate and partner. Lady Ravenna laughed with genuine delight, while Lucian offered congratulations and welcomed her properly to immortality. Others were more reserved, wary of a newly turned vampire holding such a high position, but no one challenged it. Not with Caelan standing beside Clara, his hand on her back, his power radiating clear warning. Clara kept her interests in art, continuing to study and catalog and learn, but now she could approach it from a vampire perspective, with eternity to master every detail. She and Caelan began acquiring pieces together, building their collection, and Clara found genuine joy in the partnership. She'd been right, she realized months into her new existence. Immortality wasn't hollow when you had someone to share it with. Yes, the world would change. Yes, everyone she'd known as human would eventually age and die. But she'd have Caelan through all of it, and he'd have her, and together they'd face whatever centuries brought. 1 year after her transformation, Clara stood with Caelan on the balcony of his mansion, looking out over the city's night-lit sprawl. She'd adapted fully to vampirism now, comfortable in her new existence, and deeply, completely happy. "Any regrets?" Caelan asked, his arm around her waist. "None," Clara leaned into him. "This is everything I wanted. You're everything I wanted. Even though you gave up the sun, your mortal life, the future you planned as human, I didn't give up anything that mattered. I gained what I needed most." She turned to face him. "I gained you. I gained time. I gained the ability to be your partner rather than your charge. I'd make the same choice again without hesitation." "I'm glad." He cupped her face gently. "You've made eternity bearable, Clara. More than bearable, joyful. For 400 years I existed. Now, with you, I actually live. You've given me that gift, and I'll spend forever trying to deserve it. You already do." She kissed him, deep and lingering, then pulled back with a smile. "So what now? We have forever. What do we do with it?" "Everything." Caelan's eyes gleamed silver in the darkness. "We travel, learn, love, and exist together. We build our empire, protect what's ours, and enjoy every moment. We face challenges, certainly, and obstacles, but we face them together as equals and partners. And when centuries have passed and the world is unrecognizable, we'll still have each other. Promise?" "I promise. You're mine, Caelan Drăculești. Forever and always. Nothing will change that." She believed him, and standing there in the night, immortal and loved and profoundly content, Clara knew she'd found what most people searched their entire lives for and never discovered. She'd found home. She'd found purpose. She'd found love that would literally last forever. It had started with exhaustion and a coffin mistaken for a bed. It had grown through fear and trust and impossible connection, and it had become something eternal, a love story that would outlast empires and reshape two souls into something greater than either had been alone. Clara had fallen asleep in a vampire king's coffin and woken to find her entire life changed. Now, transformed and powerful and deeply in love, she had eternity to explore what that change meant. She had forever to love Caelan, to learn beside him, to build a life that transcended mortality. And she wouldn't waste a single moment of it. Years became decades, decades became centuries, and through all of it, Clara and Caelan remained constant. They were partners in everything, ruling the Eastern Territories together, managing their collections, navigating vampire politics as a united force. They faced challenges, certainly. Other vampires tested them, jealous of their bond or hungry for power. Human hunters occasionally discovered their existence and had to be dealt with. The world changed around them, technology advancing and societies shifting. But none of it mattered as long as they had each other. They learned that love could indeed survive immortality when two people were equally committed to maintaining it. They kept each other human in the ways that mattered, reminding one another what it meant to feel and care and connect. They fell in love over and over again across the centuries, discovering new things to adore about each other as time passed. And on quiet nights, when they lay together in the darkness of Caelan's chambers, their chambers, now Clara would remember the exhausted girl who'd climbed into a coffin seeking a moment's rest. She'd found so much more than sleep that night. She'd found salvation, transformation, and a love that defied death itself. "What are you thinking about?" Caelan would ask, sensing her reflection. "How lucky I was," Clara would answer. "How lucky I am. How grateful I am that I was too tired to notice I was sleeping beside a vampire king." And Caelan would smile, pull her closer, and kiss her with the devotion of someone who'd found his purpose after centuries of searching. They had forever now, and they intended to make every moment count. The end of their story was really just the beginning of their eternity together, and it would be filled with love, partnership, and the profound joy of two souls who'd found each other against all odds and refused to ever let go. In a modern world where vampires hid in shadows and humans remained oblivious to the supernatural creatures among them, Clara and Caelan had built something precious and permanent. They'd proven that love could bridge the gap between mortal and immortal, human and vampire, temporary and eternal, and they would love each other forever, just as they'd promised. This was their happy ending, the one Clara had chosen when she'd accepted Caelan's offer, and later his transformation. This was the life she'd built, the partnership she'd claimed, the love she'd found. And it was perfect. Exhausted, she'd mistaken the vampire king's coffin for a bed. He'd woken to find her asleep inside. And in that impossible moment, both their eternities had changed forever. Neither would have it any other way.